John 4. Now Jesus learned that the Pharisees had heard that he was gaining and baptizing more disciples than John, although in fact it was not Jesus who baptized, but his disciples. So he left Judea and went back once more to Galilee. Now he had to go through Samaria. So he came to a town in Samaria called Sychar, near the plot of ground Jacob had given to his son Joseph. Jacob's well was there, and Jesus, tired as he was from the journey, sat down by the well. It was about noon. When a Samaritan woman came to draw water, Jesus said to her, "Will you give me a drink?" His disciples had gone into the town to buy food. The Samaritan woman said to him, "You are a Jew, and I am a Samaritan woman. How can you ask me for a drink?" For Jews do not associate with Samaritans. Jesus answered her, "If you knew the gift of God and who it is that asks you for a drink, you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water." "Sir," the woman said, "you have nothing to draw with, and the well is deep. Where can you get this living water? Are you greater than our father Jacob, who gave us the well and drank from it himself, as did also his sons and his livestock?" Jesus answered, "Everyone who drinks this water will be thirsty again, but whoever drinks the water I will give them will never thirst. Indeed, the water I give them will become in them a spring of water welling up to eternal life." The woman said to him, "Sir, give me this water so that I won't get thirsty and have to keep coming here to draw water." He told her, "Go, call your husband and come back." "I have no husband," she replied. Jesus said to her, "You are right when you say you have no husband. The fact is, you have had 5 husbands, and the man you have now is not your husband. What you have said is quite true." "Sir," the woman said, "I can see that you are a prophet. Our ancestors worshipped on this mountain, but you Jews claim that the place that we must worship is in Jerusalem." "Woman," Jesus replied, "believe me, a time is coming when you will worship the Father neither on this mountain nor in Jerusalem. You Samaritans worship what you do not know. We worship what we do know, for salvation is from the Jews. Yet a time is coming and has now come when the true worshipers will worship the Father in the Spirit and in truth, for they are the kind of worshipers the Father seeks. God is Spirit, and his worshipers must worship in the Spirit and in truth." The woman said, "I know that Messiah, called Christ, is coming. When he comes, he will explain everything to us." Then Jesus declared, "I, the one speaking to you, I am he." So Christ here is demonstrating a few things. One thing that he's demonstrating is a reconciliation, an extension of salvation to those who are not Jews, to Gentiles. Another thing that's being demonstrated here is you recognize that the woman says, "You Jews say that we're supposed to worship in that temple in Jerusalem, that we're supposed to worship in a particular place." And Christ responds to her, telling her, "A time is coming and has now come." A time is coming and has now come. How do you reconcile that? Which is it? Is a time coming or has it come? Well, Christ said both, so it's both. And what he was saying is that he was now the temple. A time has come, and that we will become a temple. A time is coming. The temple was no longer in this building structure, and the Spirit of God was no longer being held in the Ark of the Covenant, because the Spirit of God was in Christ, and the Spirit of God, once Christ was glorified, would then be in us. He is the temple, and we would be the temple. There will be no temple on the mount or in Jerusalem. The temple is in the believer. And he goes on to say, "You Samaritans worship what you do not know. We worship what we do know, for salvation is from the Jews. Yet a time is coming and has now come when true worshipers will worship the Father in spirit and in truth." In the spirit and in truth. What does that mean? In his spirit, because he is spirit, and in truth, in his word. For they're the kind of worshipers the Father seeks. So the Father doesn't seek those who are worshiping in a temple, in a synagogue, in a cathedral. The Father actually desires those who have a genuine and authentic relationship with him in his word and in his spirit. God is spirit, and his worshipers must worship in spirit and in truth. This is the definition of those who are included in the church. So we have to get clear on that language. We have to understand that the church referred to those who worship in spirit and in truth. The church is not in a building. It's not on the Temple Mount. It's not in the temple. It's not in a synagogue. It is not those who are worshiping in the world. It is those who are worshiping in the spirit and in truth. When people got together in the temple, the priests would read from the scroll. And so when Paul is saying that God desires good order in worship, and that males must be the ones who are leading worship, and the woman must be quiet and listen and submit, Paul was not referring to what we call worship today. Worship had to do with the males reading from the scroll to the people in the temple. So if we're gathering, if we're assembling today, that is how we are to do things. The males are to read from the scroll. A woman is supposed to sit and receive that in quiet submission, because that is how God has indicated that he desires good order in worship. He doesn't want women trying to teach a man in that situation. And what he's and it's not because women aren't intelligent. It's not because some women know the scriptures better than some men. So it can't possibly be that women are incapable of teaching or don't have a role in ministry. It is simply because God is representing our covenant, and he is demonstrating that the woman, the female church, is not to rise up over Christ. The man is to be the head in worship, so that we are representing the covenant. We are representing good order in worship and in our covenant. If that's being done right, no one is lording knowledge or authority over anybody, because if it's being done correctly, it will be done as Christ modeled for us. And actually, he never lorded anything over us. We either accepted it or we didn't, or technically not we, because we weren't here 2,000 years ago, but people either accepted it or they didn't. He didn't scream it at them. He did not coerce them. He did not burn them at the stake if they didn't accept what he was saying. And he did not inappropriately use his authority. Actually, he was more poured out to us and more humble, in a more humble position of service to us as a leader than us as a submitter, right? Let me tell you how I know that. When you are in a position of authority and you are serving in that position of authority, and people are rising up against you and being rude and outright nasty, or you have people who just, come around to take from you and don't feel any obligation to you or to others to share with others, it becomes very frustrating. And in order to continue serving, you have to reconcile that in your heart. You have to reconcile that with God. So that is how I know that Christ was actually in more of a humble position continuously. And he died on the cross. I mean, it can't get more humble than him pouring out his life for us and then dying on a cross for us. Now, although God has commanded us to assemble, when we assemble, that doesn't necessarily mean that we are worshiping God. There are many of us who have sat in churches and been completely checked out and not actually tuned in or rending our hearts toward what we're studying in the Word or hearing in the Word. So we can enter what's referred to as a physical sanctuary, like a building structure, a cathedral, a temple, etc., and never actually enter into the place where God is in our heart, and he communicates with our spirit. We can enter a physical temple and never enter the actual temple of God that is within us. The institution of churches that was developed and instituted by the Catholic Church greatly confuses us when we're using the language of church, right? God's language. If we're using God's language, we need to rend our hearts towards God's definitions of what that actually means. When God talks about the church, he's not talking about a congregation that identifies themselves by the teachings of man. Lutheranism, for example, Calvinists, Wesleyans. You remember that Paul rebuked the people for doing that 2,000 years ago, for saying, I follow Paul, I follow Cephas, I follow Apollos. Paul said, who's Paul? Who's Cephas? Who's Apollos? I planted the seed, Apollos watered it, only God has been making it grow. So we are not supposed to be following and chasing after man's doctrine or identifying ourselves by man's doctrine. We are supposed to be strictly spirit and word. That's where we worship him, not through man. And we don't identify ourselves based on man's teachings, based on some sort of brand or tradition of theology. There's only one truth. If we're returning to that truth, there's no reason to ever say that we're following someone else's doctrine. There's no way to ever identify that doctrine as being associated with someone else. Either that person is speaking on the authority of God, or they're speaking on their own authority. And Christ told us that if someone's speaking on their own authority, there's no truth in them. Servants of God, shepherds of God, only speak on the authority of God, and they shepherd people to him. And if those people begin to venerate them or worship them or do any such thing, they correct them the way that Paul did. And they say, hey, this isn't my teaching. This is God's teaching. He's the one you're supposed to be worshiping. He's the one you're supposed to be glorifying and praising. So be careful that you don't fall into idolatry. In 2 Chronicles chapter 7, you see that Solomon had dedicated the temple to God, but that the temple did not actually become God's temple until he said, I've heard your prayer and have chosen this place for myself as a temple for sacrifices. Two things. A temple has to be chosen by God and has to have his spirit. It has to be chosen by God. There are many temples, doesn't mean any of them are God's temple unless he says, I've chosen this place for myself. So first thing, his spirit has to be there, and his spirit was indeed held in the Ark of the Covenant. That's where his presence was said to be. Second thing is that the temple is identified as a place for sacrifices. So let's put together what we understand from Scripture. If a temple is the place where God chooses for his presence to be, and he chooses that temple as a place for sacrifices, and a church is defined in those who individually are worshiping him in truth and in spirit, because he is spirit, and collectively are those who are doing that individually, then what do you think might constitute a synagogue of Satan? If this is what's being done inside of the believer, inside of the temple, inside of the church, what is a synagogue of Satan? Let me say it to you this way. A temple has the presence of God and is a place of sacrifice to God. A church has the presence of God and worships him in truth and in spirit, in his word and in his spirit. A synagogue of Satan is not a building. It's not a religion. It's not a church. A synagogue of Satan is an individual who has the presence of Satan's spirit, who sacrifices to him, who both individually and collectively worship him in falsehood and in spirit, not God's spirit. And synagogues of Satan do not necessarily always appear to be a synagogue of Satan. They don't always appear to be serving him. They often appear to be serving self. and the world. So you have to recognize that that is a service to Satan. Anything you are serving apart from God, apart from his will, apart from his children, is a service to Satan. In Revelation 2:9, God says, I know your afflictions and your poverty, yet you are rich. I know about the slander of those who say they are Jews and are not, but are a synagogue of Satan. Notice the wording there. He doesn't say that they belong to some sort of building congregation. He says they are the synagogue of Satan. Revelation 3:9, I will make those who are of the synagogue of Satan, who claim to be Jews, though they are not, but are liars, I will make them come and fall down at your feet and acknowledge that I have loved you. Again, the language here is who are of the synagogue of Satan. They belong to something. They are fitted together in a way. On the other side of things, we're told that we're being fitted together to rise as a holy temple to the Lord. These, on the other side, are fitted together as a synagogue of Satan. They're not holy. They are nothing and are going to amount to nothing. They're filled with Satan. They will be persecuting God's people very intensely, because we know that in this end time that Revelation is referring to, people are going to be split off into one of two groups. They're either going to be a child of God or a child of Satan. They're either going to receive the mark or they're going to refuse the mark. So these are going to be the most wicked of the wicked. And Revelation 3:9 says something very interesting that has always really struck me. I will make those who are of the synagogue of Satan, who claim to be Jews, though they are not, but are liars. I will make them come and fall down at your feet and acknowledge that I have loved you. These are people who are counterfeit Christians. You understand? They are counterfeit Jews. When we are engrafted into the Commonwealth of Israel, we become a Jew. A Jew is not one who is outward. A Jew is one who is inward through circumcision. That's what the word says. So understand the language. This is referring to spiritual Jews, not ethnic Jews. Spiritual Jews can consist of converted Gentiles and also ethnic Jews, but they're not just ethnic Jews, and they're not just converted Gentiles. So God is referring to counterfeit Christians here as a synagogue of Satan. These are people who are claiming to be Christian, and they are liars. These are those who are going to say to Christ when he comes, Lord, Lord, didn't we prophesy in your name? Didn't we eat with you? Didn't we blah, blah, blah? And God is going to say, I never knew you. Depart from me, evildoers. I never knew you. Now, I want to explain to you something that is really important for us to understand, because there are a lot of different themes that God is bringing together within Scripture. And he may not use the same language every time, but if you seek to understand one part of it, you're going to understand the next part of it, and then you're going to start seeing how these things go together. When he tells the angel to go through the town and put a mark on the foreheads of those who grieve and lament all of the detestable things that are being done in God's temple. And in the end, when one angel is telling the other angel, before you start to harm the earth, go and put a seal on the foreheads of the servants of our God. Do you consider that to be a mark that is going to be physically seen? Do you consider that that is going to be a seal that you're going to actually be able to witness with your eyes or with your carnality? Is it something that you're going to be able to identify those witnesses of God with your carnality because, there's some sort of visual mark on them, or you're just going to know because we're so smart? I've spoken to you in several videos now detailing the signs of what you're going to see in God's servants, how to recognize God's servants. And that is not a physical sign, is it? These are signs that you're going to recognize in the spirit so that you will know who the witnesses of God are. On these videos and in A Soul Aligned, I've spoken with you about how to discern a true teacher from a false teacher, a true shepherd from a false shepherd. Are those physical signs, are those literal signs that you are going to be able to see with your carnality, or are they spiritual signs that you have been taught to be aware of? So if you understand the truth on God's side of things, then on Satan's side of things, why would it be any different? People start freaking out all the time about whether or not the vaccination is the mark of the beast, whether or not the World Wide Web is the mark of the beast, whether or not a credit card is the mark of the beast. People freak out about all these things, and they've been taught what the seal of God is. Why would you think that it would be any different? You know that in the end times, in the end days, people are going to fall into one of two groups. They are either going to be a child of God or they're going to be a child of Satan. They're going to have a mark that's going to indicate whether they are a child of God or a child of Satan. What is that mark going to be? They will either have a seal or they will have a mark. How do you know if someone is a child of God? How do you know if someone is a child of Satan? You test the spirit and you discern the fruit. Well, what about this issue of whether or not they can buy or sell? That's not that complicated, you guys. I mean, there are many things that we were not allowed to do when we were being coerced into getting this vaccination. There are many things, people who couldn't go to the store, people who, in some places, people were actually being tracked. They would be arrested if they left their house if they had not received the vaccination. God is demonstrating for us that this is not so, just because we can't conceive of it, doesn't mean that it can't happen. He's demonstrating with these examples what is coming. If they can do that, they can do other things, can't they? If you're not going to do this, all right, well, you're not able to leave. You're not able to go to the grocery store. You're not going to be able to feed your family. You're not going to be able to buy or sell. If you're not going to bow down to our God, we already had that happen. And I don't know what the situation is going to be. All I know is that we've already had a situation that should warn us that we should be able to see with spiritual eyes that if we're not going to bow down to their science God, fine. Then you can't go to the grocery store. Then you can't go to work. Then you can't leave your house. People were literally being tracked to where they could not leave their home. That means you have a baby, you have a child, you have a dog. You can't go out and walk them. If they can do that right now, then they can do whatever they want. It's going to get bad. Our concern needs to be what's in our heart. And in A Soul Aligned, 3 years ago, God had me writing about the mark of the beast being in our heart. That's where it begins. Whether or not it's going to be a physical mark, which I'm not so convinced that it will be. Whether or not it's going to be a physical mark, it's going to begin in your heart. Those things that you are thinking about, those things that you are occupying your mind with are coming from your heart. So you need to pay attention. You need to clean house. It's not enough for you to listen to these videos and think that you're doing the work. You're not cleaning house. You're just collecting information, but you don't know how to apply it until you start doing the work. And I'm not saying that to, give anyone a hard time. I'm saying it out of love. The hardest people to convince to do this stuff, and listen, I don't take it personally because I know that, even Christ was saying that a prophet is not welcome in his own town. But the hardest people to convince to do this work are people who are close to you. But I will tell you that the people who are close to me who have done the work are testifying to what that work has done. And what they'll tell me is, I can't believe it took me this long. I couldn't have known until I knew. I couldn't have known that I was even missing this that I was missing the depth. And it's caused me to realize how superficially I was looking at my problems, how superficially I was relating with God. Some people have even told me that they believed that they were Christian before and that they couldn't have known what that even meant. So I really want to encourage you to get started on the work. It's offered for free. I mean, you can go on Amazon and you can get a good portion of those books for free. If you can't afford the books, I will give them to you. Start the work. Because if you delay doing it, if you delay receiving God's ministry, if you delay doing this work on yourself, you're going to delay your time here. You understand? There's a certain amount of work that has to be done inside of you before you leave this earth in order to fulfill that covenant. And you don't want to be here. You don't want to be here any longer than you have to be here. You don't want to be here when the mark of the beast is here. I hope this has helped for you to understand what God's church is, what Satan's church is, what God's seal is, and what Satan's mark is. Thank you so much for listening. God bless you, and I'll see you in the next video.